There is a full-blown circus unfolding around the Washington Commanders right now, and somehow the most explosive story of the week doesn't even involve a single snap of football. We've got a legal showdown brewing between a franchise quarterback's family and his old college program. We've got a kicking competition that ended about as dramatically as it possibly could. We've got a projected starter suddenly banned for the season opener. And we've got a running back room that just got shaken up overnight. Training camp was supposed to be the calm before the storm. Instead, it's turning into one of the wildest weeks of the entire offseason. Let's start by clearing out the injury report, because there's actually some genuinely encouraging news buried in here before we get to the chaos. Starting center Nick Allegretti, who has been sidelined for most of training camp with a calf injury, is finally set to return to practice this week. That is a significant development for an offensive line that has already had more than its fair share of headaches this summer. Tight end John Bates, who has similarly been out of action nursing a hamstring issue, is also expected back on the practice field. Getting two key starters back into the mix is exactly the kind of momentum this team needed heading into the heart of camp. But not every update was good news. Veteran running back Jeremy McNichols is now expected to miss several weeks with a quad injury. And that one stings, because McNichols has quietly been one of the most reliable depth pieces on this roster for years. This guy has proven over and over that he belongs on an NFL roster, and he was widely expected to lock down a spot on the 53-man squad heading into the season. Now, with him sidelined, the door has swung wide open for someone else to step up and claim that opportunity. And wouldn't you know it, the timing could not be better for one particular name. Undrafted rookie running back Robert Henry Jr., who many considered the single biggest standout for this entire team throughout the preseason opener against the Dolphins, is suddenly staring down a golden opportunity. He flashed serious juice in that game, showed off impressive vision, and capped it all off with a touchdown run that had people buzzing. With McNichols sidelined, Henry now has a real, legitimate shot at locking up a roster spot that looked far less certain just a week ago. To help fill the immediate gap left behind, the Commanders didn't waste any time hitting the free agent market, signing veteran running back Craig Reynolds, who spent time playing in a Ben Johnson-style offensive system up in Detroit. Reynolds profiles as a similar type of player to the injured McNichols, an undersized, crafty back who can wear a lot of different hats within an offense. So now you've got a genuine three-man competition brewing in that running back room, with the rookie sensation Robert Henry Jr., the newly signed veteran Craig Reynolds, and holdover veteran Jerome Ford, who didn't see much run in the preseason opener, all fighting for stability in a suddenly crowded position group. Buckle up, because that competition is about to get intense. Now let's move over to special teams, where an entire kicking battle just reached its conclusion, and it did not end quietly. The Commanders have officially released veteran kicker Jake Moody, who the team originally brought in midway through last season and who handled his business reasonably well down the stretch. But this offseason, Washington brought in undrafted rookie kicker Drew Stevens out of Iowa specifically to push Moody in camp, and that competition did not go the way the veteran probably hoped. Moody reportedly struggled with consistency throughout practice, and then things got even worse in live action when he badly missed a very short field goal attempt during the preseason opener. That miss appears to have been the final nail in the coffin, because Drew Stevens has now officially been named the starting kicker heading into the 2026 season. But before Iowa fans and Commanders fans start printing jerseys, there's an important asterisk here. Stevens himself has not exactly been the picture of consistency during camp either. So while he currently holds the job by default, simply because he's the only kicker left standing on the roster, this situation has "stay tuned" written all over it. If another kicking option becomes available on the open market, it would be no surprise whatsoever to see Washington bring in fresh competition to keep the pressure on. For now, Drew Stevens is the guy, but that job security comes with a giant asterisk attached, and he is going to have to earn his keep with every single practice rep between now and week 1. And then there's the defensive front, where the Commanders just took a real hit. Starting defensive end Dorrance Armstrong has been suspended for the season opener for violating the league's personal conduct policy. This comes on the heels of Armstrong already missing basically the entire second half of last season while recovering from a torn ankle. So this is another gut punch for a player who was clearly hoping to come back strong and put last year's injury nightmare behind him. The silver lining here, if there is one, is that this front office invested heavily in edge rusher depth this offseason, seemingly with exactly this kind of scenario in mind, an untimely injury or suspension forcing the rotation to absorb a hit without the whole unit collapsing. It's not ideal timing, but this defensive line appears built to survive exactly this type of shakeup. All right, injuries, roster moves, and a kicking competition all wrapped up in one busy week of camp. Any one of those stories would normally be the headline. But none of them are the real story dominating conversation across the entire NFL landscape right now. That distinction belongs entirely to quarterback Jayden Daniels, and a jersey number controversy that has somehow turned into a full-blown legal standoff between his family and his former college program. Here's how this bizarre saga unfolded. Jaden Daniels' representation sent an official cease-and-desist letter to LSU Athletics demanding that the school immediately stop using his name, image, and likeness in any capacity going forward. This is about as serious as it gets in the world of legal correspondence. The letter, sent on behalf of Daniels by his family's attorney, explicitly warned that any continued use of his name, image, or likeness after LSU received the notice would be treated as a knowing and willful violation and would be pursued aggressively through every available legal remedy. That is not soft language. That is a shot fired directly across the bow of a major college athletic program by a sitting NFL franchise quarterback's camp. So what actually triggered this legal nuclear option? It all comes down to a single jersey number. LSU has decided to hand out Daniels' old number 5 to an incoming cornerback. And according to a statement released by a spokesperson for the Daniels family, this decision has left them feeling, in their own words, deeply disappointed and profoundly disrespected. The family says Daniels believed his number would remain a meaningful and protected part of his legacy at the school, given everything he accomplished there, including winning the Heisman Trophy. Seeing that number handed off to someone else, in their view, represents a failure to properly honor what he built during his time in Baton Rouge. LSU's side of the story, delivered by new head coach at a press conference in Baton Rouge, tells a very different tale. According to the coaching staff, the incoming cornerback was promised that specific number as part of his original recruiting pitch, well before the new coaching regime even took over. The current head coach explained that after doing his own research with the family and representatives involved, he felt he genuinely had no real decision to make. A promise was made to a recruit, and in his view, that promise needed to be honored regardless of who it might upset. He was careful to note that he wasn't in charge when that original promise was made and wasn't going to sit in judgment of a decision that predated his arrival, but at the end of the day, if a kid was told he'd wear a certain number to get him to sign with the program, that commitment should be kept. Naturally, the internet had a field day with all of this almost instantly. Social media exploded with jokes at Daniels' expense, ranging from playful ribbing to outright mockery. One of the more ridiculous jokes floating around involved a completely fabricated bit claiming a certain college football personality removed his own big toe out of respect for Daniels' missing jersey number, which obviously is absurd internet humor and not remotely real, but it captures just how much attention and mockery this whole situation has generated across football circles. So who's actually in the right here? It's worth digging into both sides fairly, because this is genuinely more complicated than a simple hero versus villain storyline. On one hand, there's a very real argument that this entire situation reflects poorly on Daniels and his camp. Demanding that a college program essentially retire your jersey number and threatening serious legal consequences if they don't comply can absolutely come across as entitled, especially when you consider that plenty of Heisman Trophy winners from other blue blood programs have never had their numbers formally retired either. Simply winning college football's most prestigious individual award doesn't automatically guarantee that kind of permanent institutional honor everywhere else in the sport, so there's a legitimate question about why this situation should be any different. There's also an uncomfortable legacy comparison that keeps getting brought up, whether people want to say it directly or not. Daniels shares Heisman Trophy status with another LSU legend who also became a first overall pick and franchise quarterback. But that other quarterback's LSU tenure ended with him hoisting a national championship trophy and famously celebrating with a cigar, cementing an all-time legendary status at the school. Daniels' college career, statistically excellent in its own right, and by most metrics remarkably comparable, still ended without a national title, closing out with him watching a bowl game from the sideline in a hoodie because the team didn't qualify for the college football playoff that season. To be crystal clear, that outcome was in no way Daniels' individual fault. LSU's defense during that stretch was genuinely porous, regularly surrendering 40-plus points in losses that had far more to do with defensive struggles than anything Daniels did or didn't do under center. But legacy perception in college football often has very little to do with fairness, and the optics of demanding a jersey retirement without that same signature championship moment have clearly rubbed some fans and commentators the wrong way. On the other hand, if you flip the script and look at it from Daniels' side, there's a genuinely legitimate grievance buried in here too. If the family's account is accurate, and Daniels was specifically told by the previous coaching staff that his number would not be reissued going forward, similar to the informal understanding reportedly given to that other Heisman winner regarding his own jersey number, then having a brand new coaching regime simply reverse that understanding without honoring the previous commitment is a real breach of trust. In fact, the program's former head coach has publicly confirmed that exact point, stating clearly that he was never comfortable issuing that other Heisman winner's number to anyone else until he received full confirmation and commitment from that player himself, specifically because you can't set one precedent for one legend and a completely different precedent for another. If that standard applied to one Heisman winner, fans have every right to ask why it wouldn't apply equally to both. So where does that leave us? Genuinely murky territory, with reasonable arguments sitting on both sides of the fence. But here's an angle worth considering that hasn't gotten nearly enough attention in this entire conversation. How much of this is actually being driven by Daniels himself versus the people managing his business and personal brand behind the scenes? There's a strong case to be made that his mother, who has been heavily involved in managing the business side of his personal brand, is likely the driving force behind this legal escalation, motivated by a genuine desire to protect her son's legacy and reputation at the collegiate level. And if that's accurate, she may honestly feel far more upset and personally invested in this particular battle than Jayden himself currently does. Because here's the thing that really matters heading into the regular season. Daniels' actual real-time focus appears to be exactly where it should be, which is on football. He is not the one drafting legal letters or personally calling up attorneys to escalate a jersey number dispute in the middle of an NFL training camp. That's simply not where his head is at right now, and he confirmed as much directly, releasing his own statement on social media after this story broke over the weekend. In that statement, Daniels expressed gratitude for his time at LSU and pride in what he and his teammates accomplished there, while making clear that any unresolved issues between his team and the university are something he hopes gets worked out privately, away from the spotlight. He was explicit that his sole personal focus right now is on mastering his new offense and locking in with the Commanders, while trusting that the business side of things will eventually get sorted out. So if you were worried this jersey drama might be creating some kind of massive distraction inside the Commanders' locker room right now, take a breath. Because there's really no evidence of that happening. This appears to be very much a background legal matter being handled by representatives and family running on a completely separate track from what's actually happening on the practice field in Ashburn. Whether or not you agree with how the Daniels camp is handling this particular fight, there's no indication whatsoever that it's pulling focus away from what actually matters heading into Week 1, getting this offense ready to roll. Regardless of where you personally land on the jersey controversy itself, one thing seems certain: we won't be seeing Jayden Daniels featured in any official LSU promotional material anytime in the immediate future. And this entire situation is going to keep generating headlines until both sides find some kind of resolution behind closed doors. So here's what I want to know from all of you. Are you siding with Jayden Daniels and his family in this jersey number standoff? Or do you think LSU and their new coaching staff made the right call here? Sound off down in the comments and let me know exactly where you land on this one, because the fan base seems genuinely split right down the middle. That is going to wrap up today's roundup of everything happening around this football team right now, from the injury report to the roster shakeups to the kicking competition drama, all the way to this wild legal standoff that has absolutely nothing to do with actual football and somehow became the biggest story of the week anyway. If you want daily coverage like this every single time there's a roster move, an injury update, or some new distraction that pops up out of nowhere during this preseason grind, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss a single update. Drop your take in the comments, hit that like button if this broke the whole situation down for you, and I'll catch you in the next one.